Good evening and welcome. Tonight we'll be going over the history and geography of Belize. Belize is located in the more northern portion of Central America. Let me get a pencil out to show you. It borders Mexico up here and Guatemala down here. It's a pretty small country, so it's just going to be a brief geography. I'm going to start out here in the Caribbean Sea. There are lots and lots of little islands that belong to Belize. They're known as keys. The largest being this one right here. It's called Hamburger's Key. And the one that's out here is the more famous one. It's the Lighthouse Reef, like Keys Island system, whatever you'd call it. It is home to the Great Blue Hole, which I will show you after we go over history and we flip through this book. It's basically like an underwater sinkhole, and it's pretty remarkable to see, where the water is like a beautiful Caribbean blue, and then there's just a perfect circle of just dark, dark, dark blue, and people like to dive in and explore it to see all the fish and all the coral and all the life in there. It's pretty awesome. But like I said, lots of many different islands. Then we reach the coastline here, which you can imagine being the Caribbean. Also, this is the Gulf of Honduras. You can see right here, Belize has part of it. It has lots of wonderful beaches and resorts and things like that. It also has a lot of cities, including the largest city in Belize, which is Belize City. And once we move more inland, we reach this area, kind of the middle, not quite highlands, not quite lowlands, where the majority of the farming is done. And in Belize, it's mostly tropical fruits like bananas and things like that. But there's also a very large timber industry, which you're going to learn a lot about in its history. This is also where the capital city of Belmopan is located. It was built, I believe there was like a big storm that wrecked Belize City, which was the capital. So they built a new one right in the middle of the country. But I suppose that people believed that they would move from Belize City to Belmopan, but people really didn't. It's not as populated as Belize City. And then down here in the south, you can see the Maya Mountains. It's very mountainous in this little chain right here. And it contains the highest point in Belize, which is around right here. So it's called Doyle's Delight, which is a very interesting name. There's also Victoria Peak, which is right about here or so, which is almost as high as Doyle's Delight. It's off by just a bit. Very close. So as you can imagine, pretty mountainous over here. And most of Belize is very, very forested, thick, humid Central American jungle. You can imagine, right? Lots of animals and plant life, things like that. And in a nutshell, that's about it for the geography of Belize. Like I said, it's not a very large country. That's about it for the important geographical aspects of Belize. So historically, in that thick, humid Central American jungle was the beginnings of the Maya civilization. Groups came into this area long before the Maya started farming, doing little cultures like that, but we don't know much about them because the Maya really kicked it off at about 2500 BCE. You can see this is also the Petén region up here of Guatemala, and up here is the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. So this whole area here was Mayan territory. And there are lots and lots of ancient Mayan ruins all throughout Belize. You can see Altanha is located right here. Probably the more famous one is Caracol, which is about down here or so near the border with Guatemala in the jungle. There's also Lamanai. There's so many. There's still some that's being uncovered today. And the Maya reached their height around 900 CE, and their civilization collapsed and they abandoned their cities. So that's why a lot of Mayan ruins are still being discovered today, because the jungle just took over all the buildings, grew over all of them, so they're still trying to be uncovered today. Flash forward to the Spanish arriving along the coast. And the coastline is, it is also pretty swampy. There's lots of mangroves and stuff there, so it wasn't beach resorts like it is today, right? So it was a pretty difficult place to land. There's lots more better harbors down here and up there. And the people who did live here were pretty hostile toward the Spanish. They weren't very welcoming. So a lot of Spanish missionaries attempted to come into the area. They were kicked out. The Spanish would try to come seek out farmland, but it was just all thick jungle, so it just wasn't seemed as like a prize place to be. So what happened was that pirates came into the area and they took advantage of lots of these little keys and the little tiny inlets to hide their ships so they could attack the Spanish ships that were sailing back out to Spain. And pretty much all these pirates, some were French, some were Dutch, but the majority were English pirates. And Spain was none too pleased about this. So what happened was Spain really started to crack down on pirates, especially the British pirates. And one of the things that these pirates were taking from the Spanish was called logwood. And it's a type of wood, or like tree you would find in this area, whose wood would be used to make dye, which was very desired over in Europe. So when the pirates were getting cracked down upon, getting kicked out of their little pirate havens, they came to the mainland and said, you know what, we're going to find our own logwood. And they started their own logwood enterprises, essentially, and created their own little economy, harvesting logwood and mahogany and lots of other prized wood growing in the area, which the Spanish did not like very much. So in 1716, the British officially decided to make a settlement in the area. They called it the Belize district. And Spain allowed that to exist because Britain pinky promised that they would help with the piracy situation, which they were like, sure, pretty much. So Spain was none too happy about that because piracy was still happening, right? And England was just looking the other way because they were profiting off of it. So there were many different attacks from the Spanish in this area, especially in the 18th century, to stop that, right? But it was pretty unsuccessful, and it just remained a British-owned territory. Then a lot of countries in Central America gained their independence from Spain, right? And Guatemala did some negotiating with the British because they were like, well, this was technically Spanish land, right? So doesn't it belong to us technically because we're the former Spanish territory and all the former Spanish territories been liberated and declared independent? And Britain's like, well, no, technically no. And it was a point of contention. But anyway, in 1833, slavery is abolished in the British Empire, which there were quite a bit of. It was wood plantations, lumber, like yards and things like that over here where there was slavery. So that really took a hit on the economy. But in 1862, to try to amend that, it officially became a crown colony. It was known as British Honduras. And it's when they started to diversify the economy and grow bananas and things like that. There's still some contention with Guatemala. Apparently, the British had promised to build a road from Guatemala City up to there, which the British, a pinky promised they would. And we're like, sure. And Guatemala was none too pleased. But hold on to that thought. In the 1930s, things really started to take a downward turn with the Great Depression. And that in 1931, a huge hurricane decimated the area, wiped out a lot of the crops and destroyed a lot of the trees, right? Not to mention destroyed homes and things like that. And essentially after World War II, the economy started to stagnate and things were going pretty bad economically. So there was a big push for labor reforms, and then political parties were formed, and then an independence movement came about, and independence was granted on September 21st, 1981. And Guatemala refused to recognize it. They said, actually, Belize is a department of Guatemala. It's not independent at all. And Belize was like, well, what am I, chopped liver? You know. There was a disagreement about that, and it goes on to this day. There is still a huge dispute over this border. Guatemala does recognize Belizean independence today, but it's still, you know, an issue about what is Guatemala, what is Belize. So the issue was sent to the International Court of Justice in 2019. Belize is expected to put in like an official response to the border dispute this year. I think Guatemala was supposed to do theirs last year in 2021, I want to say. It all got delayed because of the pandemic, you know. But I don't know if they have. I couldn't really find a lot of information about it. It's a conflict, but thankfully not like a violent one. It's not one that's really going to go to any kind of like physical war, you know. It's literally just jungles and stuff here. It's just more a point of pride at this point, I believe. So that's essentially where Belize is today. Belize's main economic focus at the moment is tourism, especially things like ecotourism in the water here, along the coasts, and in the jungles too. And they've really gone the extra mile to preserve a lot of the environment and the animals that live in Belize, which is very good, I believe. And yeah, essentially that's it for the history of Belize. It's not a very long and detailed one, but you know, that's kind of a good thing, because usually when countries have very long details, it's usually because there's a lot of bad things happening. And of course, bad things have happened in Belize. There's still a lot of poverty in Belize, but really compared to some other parts of Central America, it's doing pretty well. It's very like democratically strong. There's no real political turmoil happening, which is excellent. And like really the only main issue is just the border, and even that is not like an end of the world kind of issue, you know. So essentially that's it for the history of Belize. Let's flip through this book and I'll show you some cool pictures inside. Let's see, I'm kind of super zoomed in. Let's see. Oh, see, this is what I'm talking about with the coast. Gorgeous, like Caribbean style resorts. It's really sweet. I should also mention that because it was British owned for so long, the main language is English. So even though we're in Central America, you know, on the mainland and everything, the people here majority speak English. Look at this beautiful jaguar. They have their own national park in the center of the country, which is a huge jaguar reserve, the only one in the world. Let's see, this is a big, I need to move pencil, it's going to roll away. There we go. A big Methodist church. This is the Mayan Mountains, isn't that beautiful? Like I said, just thick jungle, trees and everything. Mangrove trees along the coast because they grow in salt water. Here's a political map of Belize. We can see the big cities, the capital there. Here you can see the Hamburger's Key, the largest of the keys. I'm sorry, I was just soaking that in. Even though this is like storm clouds on the horizon, it's still so beautiful. Oh, so here is the Great Blue Hole. Isn't that something? It's so mysterious. And look, that's like a huge yacht or something right there, right? What is that? It's like a really big yacht. So this is a gigantic hole in the middle of the ocean. It's so, so cool. So mysterious looking, right? Here's a sweet little tapir. It's a pretty big tapir in terms of tapirs, but I think this is the endangered one. Yeah, scanning the little box here. And here's a picture of Belize City. Looks like the sun setting here over the ocean, or rising over the ocean. Anyway, that's a cool statue. Pretty awesome. Some old Mayan ruins. Isn't that interesting? And there's another big temple right there. There's Hernan Cortez, who conquered most of Mexico. There's a big pirate ship too. Pirates of the Caribbean. This talks about buccaneers. So it turns out buccaneers are a different kind of pirate. It comes from the French word for barbecue. And what they would do is that they would round up cattle that got out of like Spanish plantations, and they would cook them and sell the cooked meat to passersby, make money off that way. So it's still a plague to the Spanish because they're like, that's our cattle. I didn't know that before reading this book. So here's a map of the Commonwealth. Belize is part of the Commonwealth, which is all of the nations you can see here in orange and Great Britain that just belong to like a British club where they recognize Queen Elizabeth II as their monarch, but they're independent nations with their own governments and parliaments and things like that. But they're all part of the Commonwealth. Here's just a little picture of the Guatemala flag and the Belizean flag, talking about the border conflict there. This is a courthouse. Isn't that beautiful? What else do we have? George Price, the first, let's see, make sure it's like prime minister, president. It's always different. Let's see. I believe he was prime minister. Not positive. It doesn't really talk about it here, but anyway. He was the first leader of Belize. Or he was in charge once Belize got their independence. There's the flag of Belize. Oh, here's a gorgeous beach. So lovely. And here's a farm. What are they growing? Let's see. I cannot tell. Something leafy. Who knows? See, it's talking about the fishing industry. And it says, Belize dollars are colorful. Most currency is around the world. Some wonderful scuba diving in the ocean. And this talks about how there's well-paved roads. That's always good. And people are so technologically advanced here, they have cell phones. Isn't that great? Oh, isn't that beautiful? Very lovely corner of the world. This is a lion, but it's not native to Belize. It's in the zoo. The Belize Zoo. It says, don't think that there's lions roaming around Belize, because there is not. It says this house is collecting water out here. Mostly because of things like this. This is an ambergris key. Lots of pollution can happen, right? Some of the Belize Barrier Reef. The second largest barrier reef in the world. If I'm remembering my research correctly. Look at this little moray. There's some beautiful tropical leaves there. What else do we have? A peccary. Oink, oink, oink. A little wild pig. And a howler monkey doing what howler monkeys do best. And a little slice of life picture here. Not a lot of photos in this book. Carrying a big load on her head. And this is Dangriga, which is a Garifuna village. I don't know if it talks about it. Oh, here we go. The Garifuna people. So the Garifuna are descendants of African slaves living along the coast of Central America on the Caribbean coast. And there's also another ethnic group. I don't know if we're talking about it here, but they intermingle with the Garifuna because it's like same difference. They are former slaves from the island of St. Vincent that were kicked out when slavery ended, and they settled along the coast and along with the Garifuna. So they have whole like villages and their own holidays and festivals and things like that. There are also Mennonites in Belize, which is a like German or like of German ancestry group of people who live very traditional lives with no technology, no modernization, very little contact with the outside world, only when necessary. So they're in their horse-drawn carts, they live on farms, they make their own clothes, things like that. They speak their own dialect of German. Look at some painted skulls here for tourists. That's more of a Mexico thing. It even talks about that down there, but I mean, if it looks shiny and pretty, tourists will buy it. This is San Ignacio. Another wonderful day in a little town. Belize. Some wonderful smiling faces. We have, let's see. It says people are leaving Belize to find work. And there's another wonderful face. Isn't she lovely? Before working hard in school, studying hard. This just talks about the drinking water in Belize, something that's vastly improving. And, mosquitoes are a problem in this corner of the world. Really beautiful houses. Talks about how it's on stilts. Oh, what a pretty church. It's an Anglican church because, of course, former British colony, right? And here's a Catholic church. There's another Mennonite, a horse-drawn carriage. And here's a Rastafarian, a religion based from Jamaica, but Jamaica's not too far away from Belize, so there's that as well. Another cool picture of Mayan temples. This talks about the language, which, as you can see, is English. The only country in Central America to have English as an official language. Let's see, that's a really pretty sign for Belize. And it says this is in a Mennonite, there we go, a Mennonite village, so it says Willkommen, welcome. Some beautiful dancing. Oh wow, blowing a conch horn. And let's see, it's a mural in a library, it says. This is a band from Belize, performing in New Orleans. They're called Sweet Pain. And let's see. That's a rug being made on a loom. There we go, can you see? Lots of pretty colors there. Ooh, going out for some horseback riding in the jungle. Another fun version of ecotourism. The beautiful little town there. Here's a look at. And look at this little concert venue. That's really beautiful. And some soccer players, because of course it's still Central America. Now this is Junkanoo, which is a very Caribbean celebration that's celebrated around Christmas. It's like mostly in like the islands, that direction, like Jamaica, things like that. But it celebrates the one day where the slaves didn't have to work. So they had a big like parade and party, and it's still a holiday to this day. Let's see, they're celebrating here. Oh, this is Carnival. Very bright and colorful. There's a cycling race. Apparently it's very popular. And it's Christmas. Oh my, oh my, oh my. Look at this lobster. I'm such a nut for shellfish. I love all shellfish. It's so good. What else do we have? Selling some vegetables at the market there. And stewed chicken. That looks really yummy too. What else? Conchita pibil. Pork roast on a tortilla, looks like. Sounds delicious. And of course, beans and rice. You can't go wrong, right? And one last map. You can see the islands. You can really see the mountains dominating down here as well. And that's going to be it for tonight. I'll have another video about Belize for you tomorrow that'll be whispered so you can learn some more facts. But thank you very much for watching. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on that video. I hope that you found this video relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a very good